Saturday morning, coffee is hot, the house is quiet, the week is behind me, and the next one has not started yet. This is the space where I process, not solve, not fix, not optimize or strategize or plan, just sit with whatever is circling my mind and see what emerges when I give it room to breathe, when I stop trying to force conclusions and let the thoughts find their own shape. There is something about Saturday mornings that strips away the performance. No one is watching. No deadlines are pressing. No inbox is demanding attention. No clients are waiting for responses. Just me and my thoughts and the steam rising from this cup and the gray light coming through the window. I have learned to protect this time, to treat it as sacred even when I do not use that word for much else, because this is where the real thinking happens. Not the reactive thinking that fills the weekdays. The reflective thinking that only surfaces when I stop moving long enough to notice it. 3 things this week, 3 threads I have been pulling, 3 questions I do not have clean answers to but cannot stop asking. 1. The weight of unlived lives. I have been thinking about paths not taken. Not in a regretful way. At least I do not think so. More like standing at a window, watching snow fall, and wondering about the versions of myself that might have existed if different choices had been made at different moments, the alternative timelines that branched off at each decision point and continued on without me, the version who stayed in that city instead of leaving, the one who took that job offer instead of declining it, the one who said yes to that opportunity or no to that relationship, the one who made different choices about where to live, what to pursue, who to become. Those versions exist somewhere, at least in theory, in the multiverse of what could have been. Every decision closes doors. That is not pessimism. That is not negativity dressed up as observation. That is just physics. When you walk through one door, you are not walking through the others. The doors you did not choose do not stay open waiting for you to return. They close. And behind them, lives continue that you will never live. The life where you stayed. The career you did not pursue. The relationship you did not fight for, or the one you did not walk away from sooner. The city you never moved to. The risk you never took. The safer path you did not choose. We carry those unlived lives with us. Maybe not consciously, maybe not as active thoughts, but they are there, in the background, creating a kind of existential weight we do not always name, a subtle gravity pulling at our present from all the pasts we did not have. The psychologists call it counterfactual thinking, the tendency to imagine how things could have been different, what would have happened if, where we would be now if only. It is a universal human experience, this imagining of alternate selves. I read something this week that stuck with me. We grieve not just what we lost, but what we never had, the potential that never became reality, the might-have-beens that stayed hypothetical. There is real grief in that, even if we do not always recognize it as such. Grief for versions of ourselves that only existed as possibilities. The older I get, the more I notice this weight. Not because I am unsatisfied with where I am not. I have built a life I am genuinely grateful for, a life that has meaning and purpose and people I love, but the paths not taken become more visible as the paths remaining become fewer. When you are 20, the unlived lives feel infinite. The possibilities stretch in every direction. When you are older, you start to see the boundaries more clearly. The doors that closed and stayed closed, the choices that cannot be unmade. This is not about regret. I am not wishing I had made different choices. The life I am living is the result of choices I made for reasons that made sense at the time. Some of those reasons still make sense, some do not. But I own them either way, even the ones that did not work out. Especially those, actually. The failures taught me things the successes never could. But I am curious about the weight, about how we carry forward all the versions of ourselves we did not become, about whether acknowledging that weight is necessary to fully inhabit the life we actually chose. Maybe the point is not to eliminate the wondering, but to let it coexist with gratitude, to hold both truths simultaneously, the life I have and the lives I do not, to honor what exists and what could have existed without letting either diminish the other, without needing to resolve the tension, without needing a clean answer, just letting it be what it is. Sitting with the complexity instead of simplifying it into something more comfortable. I do not have this figured out. I am not sure you can figure it out. But I notice that the more I allow myself to feel the weight of the unlived lives without fighting it, the lighter it somehow becomes. Strange how that works. The thing you stop resisting loses some of its power over you. 2. The difference between busy and present. I caught myself this week doing something I do too often, being there without actually being there. My daughter was talking to me about something that happened at school, some drama with friends, some situation that mattered deeply to her in that moment. I was nodding at the right moments, making the appropriate sounds, saying the things that signaled I was listening, that I cared, that I was engaged. But I was not listening. Not really. I was somewhere else entirely, thinking about a project, a deadline, an email I needed to send, something that seemed urgent in the moment but that I cannot even remember now. My body was in the room. My mind was in my inbox. She finished talking. I had no idea what she said. None. The specifics had passed through me without leaving any trace. I had been performing listening without actually doing it. That is not presence. That is proximity. And there is a massive difference between the two. Proximity is physical. It is being in the same room, at the same table, in the same space. Presence is something else entirely. Presence is attention. Presence is actually being where your body is instead of letting your mind wander to where it thinks it should be. I have been thinking about what presence actually requires. It is not just being in the same room. It is not even putting down your phone, though that helps. It is something more fundamental, choosing to be fully in the moment you are in, rather than rehearsing future moments or replaying past ones. The brain defaults to time travel. It is constantly projecting forward, worrying about what is coming, planning what to do next, anticipating problems that have not happened yet. Or it is scrolling backward, analyzing what already happened, rehashing conversations, relitigating decisions, wishing things had gone differently. Staying in the present moment requires effort. It requires overriding the default. It requires noticing when you have drifted and pulling yourself back. Again and again. Because you will drift. That is what minds do. The thing about busyness is that it masquerades as engagement. You feel productive. You feel like you are handling things, on top of things, managing your responsibilities like a competent adult. But you are actually missing everything that cannot be scheduled or measured or checked off a list. Connection happens in the unscheduled moments, the conversations that meander without a point or a purpose, the silences that are not awkward but comfortable, that say more than words could, the looks that communicate something words cannot capture, the small gestures that say, I see you, I am here, you matter to me, without saying anything at all. None of that happens when you are busy, only when you are present, only when you are actually in the moment rather than using the moment as a holding pattern while you think about something else. I do not have this figured out. I am writing about it precisely because I am not good at it, because I catch myself, again and again, mistaking motion for connection, being in the room without being in the conversation, hearing without listening, looking without seeing. The irony is not lost on me. I write about presence while struggling to practice it. I teach what I most need to learn. Maybe that is always how it works. The goal is not to never be busy. That is unrealistic and maybe undesirable. Some things require busyness. Some seasons demand it. The world does not stop needing things from us just because we would prefer to be fully present in each moment. The goal is to notice when busyness is stealing presence, and to choose differently even when it feels inefficient, even when the urgent screams louder than the important. The work will still be there. The deadlines will still exist. The projects will still need attention. But the moments with the people who matter, those are finite. Those do not wait. Those happen once and then they are gone, replaced by other moments you will also miss if you are not paying attention. I made a commitment this week, a small one, but specific. When someone I love is talking to me, I will put everything else down, not just physically, mentally. I will be in that conversation and nowhere else. I will fail at this repeatedly. That is not pessimism. That is just honest prediction based on past performance. But I will keep trying because presence is a skill, and skills improve with practice, even imperfect practice. 3. Why we resist what we need most. There is a pattern I keep noticing in myself and in the clients I work with. The thing we resist most is usually the thing we need most. Resistance is information. When something feels hard to approach, when we keep finding reasons to delay, when we invent distractions that feel urgent but are not, that is usually a signal. Not always a signal to push through, but always a signal worth examining carefully. Sometimes resistance means something is genuinely wrong for us. The body knows things the mind has not caught up to yet. The instinct to avoid can be wisdom, protecting us from paths that do not align with who we are or who we want to become. Sometimes no is the right answer, and resistance is how we know it. But more often, in my experience, resistance points toward growth, toward the edge of our comfort zone, toward the conversation we need to have, the change we need to make, the truth we need to face, the things that would move us forward if we could just get ourselves to do them. This week I resisted writing, not the daily posts and regular content. Those are routine at this point. The neural pathways are worn smooth. I can produce them without much friction because I have done it so many times. What I resisted was the deeper work, the stuff that requires sitting with discomfort and pulling something honest out of it, the writing that leaves me feeling exposed, the words that might not land the way I hope, the vulnerability of saying something true instead of something safe. I found a dozen other things to do instead. Emails that suddenly seemed critical, tasks that jumped to the front of the queue without any logical reason, reorganizing files that had been fine as they were, research that felt important but was really just procrastination wearing a productive disguise. All of them felt legitimate in the moment. All of them gave me the satisfaction of checking something off. None of them were as important as what I was avoiding. Here is what I have learned about working with resistance. Do not try to eliminate it. That rarely works. Resistance is stubborn. It adapts. Try to kill it, and it just finds a new form. Try to ignore it, and it gets louder. Instead, get curious about it. What is the resistance protecting? What fear or discomfort is underneath the avoidance? What story am I telling myself about what will happen if I actually do the thing I am avoiding? Usually, resistance is trying to keep us safe. Safe from failure, safe from judgment, safe from the vulnerability of putting something real into the world and having it not land the way we hoped. Safe from the exposure of being seen clearly. That protection made sense at some point. The brain learned that certain things lead to pain, and it built walls to keep us away from those things. But safety and growth often point in different directions. The things that keep us safe also keep us stuck. The walls that protect us also imprison us. I am not saying to ignore resistance entirely. Sometimes it is wisdom wearing uncomfortable clothes, but more often it is fear dressed up as caution. And the only way to know which is to examine it closely, to ask the questions, to be honest about what is underneath. The practice is learning to tell the difference, and then moving toward what matters anyway, even when resistance is screaming to stay where it is safe. The things I am most glad I did are almost all things I resisted at first. The patterns are consistent enough that I am learning to treat resistance as a potential indicator of importance rather than a reason to avoid. What I am sitting with, a few questions I am carrying into the week. Not because I have answers, because they seem worth asking, because the asking itself might shift something in how I see and how I act. What unlived life am I still mourning? And can I hold that grief without letting it diminish gratitude for what I actually have? Where am I confusing proximity with presence? Who deserves my full attention and is getting only a fraction? What am I resisting that I probably need to face? What growth is waiting on the other side of that discomfort? Where am I choosing safety over significance? And is that choice serving me or limiting me? No clean answers to any of these, just questions worth sitting with. The kind of questions that do their work slowly, over time, shifting perspective incrementally until one day you realize something has changed. What I am listening to, this morning's soundtrack, Bon Iver's self-titled album. It is not easy listening. The production is layered, sometimes dense. Vocals that blend into instruments, instruments that feel like voices. It demands attention in a way that some music does not. But there is something about it that matches the mood of early morning thinking. Spacious but textured, melancholy without being heavy, the kind of sound that creates room for reflection rather than filling space with distraction. Perfect for sitting with big questions without needing to answer them, for letting thoughts wander where they want to go. A line that landed. The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. Alan Watts, we spend so much energy resisting change, trying to control outcomes, holding on to what was because the uncertainty of what is coming feels unbearable. We grip the familiar even when the familiar is no longer serving us. What if the discomfort is not the problem? What if fighting it is? The image of joining the dance is what stays with me, not controlling the music, not choreographing the steps, just moving with what is happening instead of against it. Gratitude. This week I am grateful for Saturday mornings, the ritual of coffee and silence and space to think, honest conversations, the kind where you say the thing you have been avoiding and the relationship gets better instead of worse, the clients who keep showing up, who trust me with their businesses even when the path forward is unclear, the small progress that compounds. Not every week is a breakthrough. Some weeks are just showing up. Those weeks count too. The people who read these words, connection across distance. It means more than I usually say. Until tomorrow, that is what I am thinking about this week. Maybe some of it resonates. Maybe none of it does. Maybe you are sitting with entirely different questions. And that is exactly right. Either way, thanks for being here, for taking a few minutes to think alongside me. Tomorrow I will share what I learned this week, the wins, the losses, the adjustments, the practical stuff alongside the reflective stuff. For now, enjoy the weekend, rest if you can, reflect if it helps, be present with whoever is in front of you, and go easy on yourself. The week was long, you made it through. That counts for something. One step, one day, grace over guilt.